Everybody always asks, what's your favorite type of soda? Pepsi or Coke? But nobody thinks to ask the real important question. What brand of root beer is your favorite? And there's a lot to choose from. So for this video, I've gathered up the most popular brands of root beer that I could find, and we're gonna put them on a tier list. Now the parameters of this tier list are strictly based off of taste. Branding will not get you a boost in rankings, but I'll make a nod to it if I like it. Starting off, we're gonna take a look at one of the big three, and that's Barq's root beer. So I gotta throw my brother-in-law under the bus here a little bit. The Q at the end of Barq's, he thought looked like a G, so he always called it Barge's root beer. So for any of you out there that have confused that Q with a G, you're not alone. I do like Barq's branding. I know I already said the parameters are going to be based on branding, but it's just so simple, and it's just really nice. I like the barrels in particular. And the can has all those diamond shapes on it. Like if you get the red cream soda variant of it, it's the same diamond pattern on the can, but it's red. It's just, I don't know, it's satisfying, it's cool. But anyway, we're here for the taste, so let's get to it. Now from my experience, Barq's just has a classy taste. And it holds true even now. When you think of root beer, I think the flavor of Barq's is exactly what you think of when you think of root beer. I mean, its motto, "It's good since 1898, is a testament to how good of a root beer it is. So for Barq's root beer, I'm gonna give it an A tier. It's a pretty solid root beer. So now's the part of the video where I'm gonna introduce a little bit of a twist. After putting each one of these brands of root beer on a tier list, I am then going to pour a portion of it in what I like to call the mug. So I was just thinking, since we're ranking all these brands of root beers on taste, why not combine all the tastes of the root beer and then give that, the ultimate root beer, its own ranking. So this will be interesting. So Barq's root beer, first one to the cup. I'm only gonna add a little bit. There's quite a few root beers to go through. Now I know the flavor of these root beers are generally probably gonna be the same, but I still think it's fair to give a little palate cleanser before I try the next one. So water. And not sure if you can tell, but I have a son and he's really into cars right now. So next we have another one of the big three root beers, and that is A&W. Now it says right here, A&W has been around since 1919 on the can. And if we get a little timeline going here, Barq's has been around since 1898, which means that somebody, after 20 years of Barq's, was like, we gotta try something different. Now the branding of A&W root beer is just aesthetically pleasing to look at, in my opinion. I said the barrels on the Barq's root beer looked good. The A&W can is a barrel in itself, so that's pretty cool. The taste, however, slightly different. Barq's gives, I want to say, a little bit more of a punch, where A&W kind of just withdraws a little bit. However, it is smooth, so I gotta give it credit to that. But because it doesn't really give you the more like intense root beer flavor, I gotta give it a B on the tier list. A&W into the cup. I'm starting to wonder, depending on the root beer, if we're gonna get any change in color, but I'm kind of doubting it. Next up, we have the final of what I would call the big three of the root beer brands, and that is mug root beer. Now mug root beer is just fun. Like, you got a bulldog holding a glass of root beer, you got like the foam from like the fizziness on the top of the can. It's just a fun little design. It's a fun little root beer. But I would say Mug, Barq's, and A&W root beer are all the big three. When you think of root beers, those are the ones you're thinking of. After this one, we're gonna get into more of like the nuanced root beers that are still big brands, in my opinion, but they're not like, that's not the first go-to that you see when you go down the soda aisle. Ooh, that had a snappy crack. Now, mug root beer, oddly enough, I'd like to say is a blend between Barq's and A&W. It has the smoothness of A&W, but it has a little bit more of the punch that Barq's did. So, I think personally, I'd put Mug up there in A tier with Barq's, but right behind it. Because it's not as good as Barq's root beer, but it is really good, and I think it's better than A&W. So, A tier for Mug. Here goes Mug in the mug. Just looking at that mug, I can feel like my blood sugar levels just like freaking out right now. Stay hydrated, everyone. So the next brand of root beer we have is a particular favorite of mine, mostly because I swapped from drinking sodas to more, I don't want to say healthier alternatives, but better for you alternatives, is Zevia's creamy root beer. Now that's not saying I don't enjoy a nice soda every now and then, but I was a pretty avid soda drinker back in the day, especially as a teenager. I would have multiple sodas a day throughout the week. But eventually my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, got me into Zevia, and it took a little bit getting used to it, but as soon as I was able to like replace normal soda drinking with the Zevia, I was losing weight, I was feeling much more better and not like bloated and like going through sugar crashes and stuff. So not to like hype up Zevia or anything like that, because that's not what this video is about, but it was a nice alternative for me to kind of ditch guzzling gallons of soda throughout like, you know, a day-to-day basis. So if you're interested in an alternative to soda, not sponsored, but I'd recommend Zevia. However, I will admit, it doesn't necessarily match the flavor profile that your standard soda does. It takes a little getting used to. So Zevia's Creamy Root Beer, it does the job, but it definitely tastes like you're drinking a better for you soda, for lack of a better term. So there's an aftertaste when it comes to Zevia, and I think just in beverages like this that it takes a while to get used to. I've been drinking it for years now, so like it doesn't stick out to me at all, but I do recognize that the flavor just isn't as good as your standard, like, just soda. So for that, I do really like Zevia, but in terms of comparing the flavor of its root beer to the other root beers that we've been tasting so far, I'm gonna give it a C. Now I'm sure for a lot of you out there, probably gonna be lower, but for me, since I like Zevias already, and just I have that familiar aftertaste flavor already, it's a C for me. Adding a little bit of a better for you alternative into the mix. Okay, so the next brand we have on the list is my favorite brand of just soda in general right now, and that is Spreacher. Now, Spreacher is a brewing company based in Wisconsin. They do, you know, beers and stuff like that, but they also have a really extensive line of sodas. And I've been drinking them a lot lately, and I think they are my top favorite soda brand of all time right now. And so, like, every flavor I've had has just been good. So the root beers, to me, they're pretty high class. So for me, Spreacher root beer, it's gonna be an S tier. It's my favorite root beer. Add a little bit of Spreacher into the mug. I have to calm down on my pores, it's starting to get a bit full here. So the next brand I haven't personally tried, but I see it all the time in stores. So I'd have to imagine it's a pretty popular brand. And that is Jones Cane Sugar Soda root beer flavored. So Jones, I don't believe I've had a Jones product. I might have had an oddball one here and there, maybe one of their just random flavors or something like that, but I don't think I've had a genuine Jones soda. So this will be the first time for me, at least trying the root beer. So this is a exclusive first tasting of a Jones root beer on the DakkyDak channel. Bottoms up. That's nice. That's nice. I would say it's more of an in-between root beer. It doesn't necessarily have the punch of that root beer-esque flavor, but it does go down really smooth. So I'd probably put it more in line of what the A&W root beer was, give or take. As far as like, it's more smooth than it is punchy with the flavor. I'm trying to think of a better word to explain the root beer flavor, but I'm sure those of you who drink root beer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The rootiness, I guess you could say. So I think I'm gonna rank the Jones root beer B tier. I think that's appropriate for it. Dump it in the mug. I think it's getting lighter, honestly. So the next brand I have is a classic in my mind and was definitely a staple in the Hayden household when I was growing up, and that is IBC root beer. Now, IBC, it was just always a thing to have around the house as like a treat soda. Like you wouldn't buy them all the time because it was cheaper to buy the cans versus like get a 4-pack of the bottles and stuff. But every time we had it in the fridge, it was just always a treat to have. And call it nostalgia, if you will, but I have fond memories of drinking this root beer with my dad. So I already know it's probably gonna rank pretty high for me. The flavor does it justice too. Like a nice ice cold IBC root beer, the flavor is pretty solid. It's definitely got more of that root, I want to say root beeriness, but that doesn't sound right. But it's got more of that punch and that impact on the flavor. So I would rank IBC root beer an A. This one's for you, Pops. Putting it in. I feel a little bad for him because he's not allowed to have sugar as much anymore. And I know he really likes the IBC root beers. So this one's for you, Pops. So speaking of dads, this next brand I'm kind of familiar with because I had it a couple times growing up, and that is Dad's Old Fashioned Root Beer. Now I feel like I only see this root beer in farm stores. I don't see it in like shelves at like, you know, Kroger or a Walmart or like another grocery place. It's almost entirely in like rural farm stores, I feel like. That and Cracker Barrels, because Cracker Barrel's always got a selection of, you know, out there sodas. And I'm just now realizing it's not a twist top, so I'll be right back. My mother-in-law got me this for I think one of the first Christmases that my wife and I were together back when we were dating, and it is one of the coolest bottle openers that I've ever owned. Not that I've needed to have a bottle opener for really anything besides sodas like this, but I really think it's cool, and I've had it with me ever since, and it works like a charm. So Dad's Root Beer, it's been a while since I've had it, so I remember it being really good, but I remember liking their cream sodas more, so let's give it a try. It's punchy, it's very punchy. Like it's got the flavor, it's very strong, almost too strong. It's good though. But I definitely feel like it has kind of like a lingering aftertaste a little bit. I think for Dad's Root Beer, I'm gonna give it a B tier. I think that suits it nice. It's got a really solid taste, but that aftertaste just leaves a little bit something to be desired. It kind of lingers with you a little bit too much. So I think a B tier suits it just fine. Dad's Root Beer, into the mix. The next root beer brand I have, I feel like kind of has a cult following. I see it in like certain restaurants, and it's offered as kind of like more of a premium root beer or something like that, because they actually just give you the bottle instead of pouring it in like a cup or something like that. And that is XXX root beer. Now, XXX root beer, I think, is one of the first off main brand root beers that I tried as a kid, because I thought it was really cool at a restaurant to just get a bottle like this of your own root beer, because that wasn't like a typical thing that happened. Dad would sometimes bring home the IBC root beers, which were in glass bottles, which were a treat, but having this at a restaurant, I don't know, just made you feel cool. Now, I haven't had a XXX root beer in a long time, but if I remember right, I remember liking them. And I noticed that their bottle shape is a little bit different than your standard typical glass bottle. Or, maybe it looks kind of similar. But I think it's got more of like a boxiness to it, which is, you know, cool being different. Oh, that flavor is really good. It's got just enough of that root beerness to it, and still really smooth and really nice. And I like that. I think the more root beers I'm drinking, the more I'm liking having that smoothness to it as well, because just like strong punch to the back of the throat root beer flavor is kind of not doing it for me right now. So that nice bit of flavor with a bit of smoothness just makes it a really nice experience. So XXX root beer, I'm gonna give it an A tier. All right, adding XXX root beer into the mix. That is a dark color. Whew. It's about looking like a cola now. Now the final root beer that I have is kind of more or less the reason I wanted to make this video in the first place, because I thought this was an interesting twist to root beer, and then that got me into the rabbit hole of looking at root beer brands, different flavor profiles of root beers, and so on and so forth. But that is the A&W Ice Cream Sundae root beer. Now, when they first came out with this, you know, you see the other soda brands like Coke, Pepsi, Sprite even. Dr. Pepper, I've noticed, has been doing it a lot too. They have their own wacky, different like flavor sodas that they put out there. And I was just kind of shocked to see root beer doing that, because, you know, the root beer brands have the cream sodas, the red cream sodas and stuff like that. Why need to mix it up? You know what I mean? Excuse me. But this is my first time trying the Ice Cream Sundae root beer, and given I gave A&W what'd I give them? A B tier? I think they're a B tier. I'm curious to see how this will stack up. So here we go. A&W Ice Cream Sundae root beer, going down. Oh, that's interesting. When I smelt it, bringing the can up, I was hit with like a chocolatey smell, which wasn't bad, but I wasn't expecting it. And the flavor, I don't know about the flavor. It tastes like vanilla ice cream, but like not. It tastes like a creamy vanilla ice cream with like a hint of root beer in there almost. Like, it's almost like a root beer float, but someone dropped a chocolate bar in there. It's weird. It's interestingly weird. It's not bad, but I really don't think I would drink this. I don't know what to rank that, because it's not bad. I wouldn't go out of my way to buy this again. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this at a D tier, because I know Zevia is at a C tier, and that, you know, is my baseline. Like, I'll drink that every day. So since I wouldn't drink this every day, I'm gonna give it a D. And I know a lot of people probably aren't gonna like that, but I'm gonna put it at D. I feel like I almost shouldn't even add it to the big cup because it's just got such a different flavor profile. So I think I'm gonna exclude this from the big mug. All right, now finally we have the mug. My blood sugar is freaking out just looking at this thing. Let's give it a little smell. Smells like root beer. All right, let's give it a taste, I guess. You know, a lot better than I expected. It's so hard because, like, you can't even really tell if some root beers are like shining through in this just amalgamation of different flavors. But it's kind of got almost the best of both worlds. It's not like mind-blowing by any means, but it tastes like a root beer. You know, it's all kind of similar, just with like slight deviations here and there. So, you know, I'd give it a B, honestly. Like, it's not bad, but it's not anything crazy. Like, it's your standard root beer experience. What are you gonna do? Now, I know I said that was the final root beer, but I have a little surprise. I had the privilege, last time I was in Wisconsin, to go to the Wisconsin Museum of Root Beer. And I brought back with me a selection of recommended root beers. Now, the Museum of Root Beer was quite an interesting experience. They had pretty much almost every type of root beer, like anything that I could think of. Like, I'm talking about like old bottles, old cans, old advertisements. Like, they had just about everything.
Inflation. Ridiculous.
And then they had like shelves in the main room where you could purchase root beers from like all over the country. Like, there was brands that I've never even seen before that they had on the shelves. It was perfect because we were in the area while I was still brainstorming the video. And so when I saw the museum, I was like, I got to, like, I have to check this out. So the root beers that were recommended to me by the root beer extraordinaire, I guess you could call them, were these. So there's the 1919 Classic American Root Beer, which honestly I thought the branding was really cool on this one, and I believe it came in a keg, which I didn't get the keg, but I should have, but I thought it was really cool. And then we have this one, which is called the Blondie Root Beer, which is a blondie, which is kind of weird seeing a root beer in this kind of color. I mean, I know the Zevia root beer was this kind of color, but like you kind of expect that when they don't use like the caramel color and stuff like that. So I'm really interested about this one. Then we have the salted caramel root beer, which I thought was pretty interesting, you know, considering we just had the ice cream sundae root beer. I wonder how this is going to stack up in comparison to that. And then finally we have the root beer that was recommended to me by the museum guy that was managing the place. This was his favorite root beer. This is what he said was his favorite root beer. And it is a Beta root beer, made in Louisiana, I believe. Now these, I'm gonna put in their own honorary ranking. They're not gonna go on the main tier list, but I thought they were at least worth a mention because that's kind of a crazy thing to have a whole museum dedicated to root beer. But like, yeah, it makes sense. There's so much in terms of just like branding over the years that root beer has gone through. It's kind of crazy actually if you think about it. Cleanse of the palate. Hopefully that water's fighting for its life against all the sugar that's rushing through my veins. Okay, so since we ended with the ice cream sundae root beer, I think we start with the salted caramel root beer. I think that makes sense. Oh, it's a twist top. Nice. Let's give a smell, because like salted caramel root beer, I'd imagine has a particular smell. Honestly, no. There's a slight sweetness to it, though. It smells like a normal root beer, though. That's interesting. I can taste the salted caramel, and it goes really well with the flavor of root beer. And it's still really nice and smooth. That's a good flavor. It's not your standard root beer experience, but it's a nice way to mix it up. And I really appreciate that. So that's pretty solid. I'm gonna go ahead and put this at B on the honorary root beer tier list. Okay, next we have the blonde root beer, which is just kind of funky to look at, in my opinion. So I'm curious if the flavor matches with what a normal root beer tastes like, or if it's gonna be slightly different. So let's try it. Oh, this one doesn't have a twist top. I always love having an excuse to use my bottle opener. And there we go. All right, blonde root beer. Oh, I don't know about that one, Chief. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that flavor. I don't know what it is that they used in it, but that's really not doing. This was made with, hold on a second. I'm just now reading, this is from the Spreacher Brewery Company? Huh? The same company that made my favorite root beer and favorite sodas in general made this? I am blown away right now. Because this is not good. Like, I am poof, like my mind is blown right now. Because to me, my opinion, it's not good. I mean, I would drink it. I'll give it that, but just that flavor's not doing it for me. I can't really tell you what that tastes like, but there is a really bad aftertaste afterward. I think that says enough. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna give this one a D. Like, I'm gonna put this as a D on the honorary tier list. I'm just baffled that the Spreacher Brewery Company made this root beer. This is probably the first Spreacher product I've tasted that I actually don't like. Huh, wow. Hey, you know, if you have a company that just does nothing but makes 3-pointers all day, you're bound to have one miss every now and then, I guess. All right, so since the Abita was the recommended root beer by the guy there at the museum, I'm gonna go with the 1919, which was kind of my intentional pick because I really like the branding of it a lot. So I'm hoping the flavor matches up with it. Oh, that was clean. That was real clean. All right, let's give it a taste. You know, that's a pretty good mix. Kind of being biased because I picked it, I guess, but that's a nice blend. I actually like that a lot. The flavor is there, and it's pretty solid, but the smoothness is also there. I'd almost compare it to my favorite root beer, which is the Spreacher one. I'd compare it to that, but the Spreacher's got a little bit slightly different of a flavor profile on it. I think it's probably from the honey that they use in that. So that's why I think I like that one more. But this is really good. Like, it's a nice combination of the root beer flavor plus the smoothness, and I like it. I like it. I would have drank a keg of this. I'll have to remember that next time I'm ever in the area. So yeah, I'd rank the 1919 root beer at A tier. It's a really nice root beer. I really like that. Now, we're gonna see if the guy at the root beer museum knew what he was talking about with this Abita root beer. Let's find out. It's a lot smaller than the normal bottles we've been using, so maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not. We'll find out. All right, Abita root beer. Final root beer of the video, going down. Ooh. That's fascinating. That's actually really good. And I believe he said this was also a really good root beer to make root beer floats with. I believe he said something about the flavor profile of this root beer being really, really good to make root beer floats with. And I agree. That's really nice. The flavor is there, and it definitely has that root beeriness flavor to it, and it is smooth, but it's like, this was a great combination of the two. This does it just a bit better. And honestly, I think this kind of rivals my root beer preference of Spreacher almost. I'm maybe gonna put Spreacher just a little bit on top of it, just because they're my personal favorite brand, just for sodas right now. But this Abita root beer is really good, so I'm gonna give it an S tier. That's a delightful root beer. Wow. What do you guys think of my tier list? Would you change anything? Be sure to like and subscribe and post in the comments down below what you'd change. And I will see you guys in the next one.